The bit of this webinar here today is to share with you some systems for your property. And this event has been sponsored by My Property app, which is going to be the main focus for tonight's webinar. Give you a little bit of insight as to why My Property app was built and more importantly, how to use it effectively. And this is really where you get to ask questions and really try and unpack how you can gain the most value. Now, the reason why systems are important is because it helps you automate, systemize, and optimize. A highly competitive environment like the property investing space. It's Lawrence Bull, and I'm a property investor, a coach, and an entrepreneur. And I'm also the founder of the My Property app here in South Africa. Quick last mention, questions welcome. Please just post them in the questions tab in the application, and what David will do them all together for the end of the webinar, and then we can run through those questions. If there's a quick question that relates a slide that we're busy on, then I'm happy to answer it. But otherwise, they will be answered all at. Now, why should we be using tools, be it Property app or several others that we'll be speaking about tonight? The reason is because one, a tool or a helps you save time, which again, in a very competitive industry like property investing, you need a competitive edge that you can get. Number two is for accuracy. If you can use a tool that is sound formulas, then you know you're getting the right outcome. And the last and final part of using a tool is you remove human back of a napkin, analysis. There's things that you are undoubtedly going to forget or potentially miss. Using a system that's underpinned by the right formulas will make sure that you don't make those mistakes. There are going to be essentially two sets of tools that I want to show you tonight. One is tools used for area research. And then right at the end, we're going to be talking about how to manage your deals using My Property app. And I'll take you through a live demo so that you really see what it's all about, and then ask questions along the way if something doesn't make sense. So let's start with area research. In my mind, two important tools that I like to use, and this is a personal preference. I'm sure there's many other competitors out there, and you're welcome to shop around. This is just what I've seen in the market as tools that benefit us. So the Lightstone and the TPN reports are very handy. Lightstone, in my opinion, would use it for more your cash strategies where you're looking to make a lump sum of profit and sell. If you're looking at forcing appreciation, if you're looking at a deal. Lightstone for me is great because Lightstone gives great resell comparable information. I'll show you a few examples of that. Where I see TPN playing is TPN is more on the rent. This is where you get an indication of what the rent might be in an area, what the risk is in an area, the demographics of the people in the area might be. So those are when I would use these specific reports. Lightstone when I'm looking at a cash strategy, TPN when I'm looking at a rental or a cash flow strategy. So let's unpack Lightstone a little bit more in detail. Now, what you'll see on this screen is a report that I pulled for Bonero Park. And X marks the spot, that little, the red circle that I've highlighted there, the property that I've pulled the report for. Now, what about this specific section of the Lightstone report is that you can see the numbers 5, 1, and 2, which are properties that have recently sold that are basically next door neighbors of the property I've pulled. I can back up whatever the estate agents by looking at these recent sold comparables. So if the estate agents know you could easily get 1.3 as a resale value, that's a good starting point. But then I want to go and back it up by looking at exactly what the report is telling me. So if you're on your Lightstone report, this is the first you'll see of the comparable analysis section. If you go to the next, you will see a detailed outline of those different properties and what they sold for. So I've just highlighted the 1, 2, and the 5 because those are the ones that are closest to the property that we're looking at. You can see the sales price, the size, and then the rand per square meter, which for me is important because if you want to get an accurate resale value of your property, use the rand per square meter average and then calculate your resale value. So by that is take the 1179 plus the 154 plus the 1042, which is the average rand per square meter for the properties, divided by 3 to get an average rand per square meter value, which is 1256, times that one resale value. So that's sort of the way that I would use this report. Look at properties that are of similar in the same sort of area. Find out what the average rand per square meter is for those 3, 4, whatever property looking at comparing it against. Then times that average meter rate by the size of the property you're looking at, and you're going to get a relatively accurate resale value. And that's then what you can use to compare to what the state and validate their assumptions. So I hope that makes sense. Again, if you have any questions, feel free, pop it in the question bar at the end of the session. The next part of the Lightstone report, which I really admire, and like, is this section where they show you the capital appreciation. What you can see in Bonero Park is this report is telling you what the property sold for in 2006 all the way through to 2016. And then the legend at the bottom right tells you if it's all freehold or vacant land. And if we just look at specifically faults from 2009 to 2016, see it started in of the property sold in that area. In 2016, it's now just over 1 million. So you can work out that the capital appreciation over those 8 years has been 7.5%, which if it's been going at 7.5% per annum last 8 years, you can then predict with relative certainty that it could go up by 7.5 again to come. Again, no one's got a crystal ball, but you can use this information to make an educated decision. The way that is quite simple, actually. So you need to take the value in 2016, which is 1050, minus it by the value of 2009, which is 56, means that there has been a growth of 394,000 Rand in property values 2009 to 2016. If you divide the growth of 394,000 by the starting point of 656,000, it means it's grown 60%. So over the period from 2009 per annum, the years that it's gone through that 60% growth, so 2016 has been 8 years. So 60% divided by 8 years tells you that the properties have been growing at roughly 7% per annum. And again, you can use that as a prediction for the future. So if the last 8 years have been going at 5% growth, you can then assume, the following years to come will also go at 5%. Let's go into TPN. So that like Lightstone, it gives you some comparable information, helps you with your resale, tells you if it's a capital appreciating area. For me, it's a great tool to use looking at capital flips, or you're looking at cash strategies. If we went out to TPN, TPN is a tool that I would recommend when you're looking at rentals. So if we jump right in, this is one of the reports that I pulled from TPN, which states that by the end of 2018, 73% of tenants rent for less than 6 months. And at the bottom part of the graph, the axis, you can see the percentage of people that are renting for those price points. So you can see 20% of people rent for less than 1,000, 52 between 3,000 and 7,000 Rand, and so on and so on. That's an important thing for us to know as investors, that the biggest need for tenants, or the biggest demographic in which we can market our business to, is between the 3,000 and the 7,000 Rand per month. It's the low cost, affordable housing. That is where the best returns and the best rentals are in South Africa, because you've got 25% of people living in that space. So that is an important thing for you to acknowledge, and because then you know which areas you should be targeting for rental. This is a very interesting section of the TPN, which states that tenants tend to stay for an average of 18.3 months in a lease agreement. So basically say that every year and 6 months, people to move. They're going to be budgeting a bit of time that your property will be vacant, because if somebody's leaving, it's not guaranteed that you're going to fill that spot with another tenant. So you might have a week, 2 weeks, 2 months of vacancies. Because a year and a half, what the statistics show is that every year and a half, people are, relocating to another property. So again, something you to know that you can budget for maybe equal to vacancy every year and a half, because what the data is telling us. This next section is also very interesting. The blue line is telling average vacancy rate is. So nationally in South Africa, properties are sitting vacant for about 8% of the time. So that's a great budget or number for us to know that every year we should be budgeting 8% of the time our property will be vacant. And if you bring that back to a month or to a weekly figure, 8% of a year is rough. And then the green bar, and please note, gentlemen, this is national vacancy and escalation. So it's not particular to Johannesburg or whatnot. So the green is the average escalation. You can see that the rental is escalating at 2.7% every year. So that's again something we need to be aware of, because every year that these increase in rent means we're getting more money in per year. And then this is probably my favorite section of TP, and it tells you which are the best performers. And I've just chosen Johannesburg because this is the area that I invest in. And what you can see is the blue bar tells you what the potential capitalization is in that area. The green tells you what the rental yield is, and then the red tells you what the risk is from a tenant not paying point of view. And what you can see is that Berea, being the tallest, is still a very good area to invest in when it comes to rentals. Yes, the capital appreciation, which is indicated by the blue bar, is quite low, higher than your monthly expenses. And then the red bar is not too much of a risk, about a 10% chance of defaulting in that area. If you look at Windsor East, in comparison, there's no capital appreciation. The yield is okay, but look at that red bar, how risky it is investing in Windsor East. So again, the reports and the tools that you need to be using is to validate what estate agent has given you as advice, and for you to make more educated decisions. Okay, so that was for me the area research, just showing you what kind of tools you can use to the estate agent's opinion, find an area that works for your strategy. But now that you've got your strategy, you've got your area, now we need to start analyzing deals. And that is where myapp.property. It helps you manage your deals, but as well analyze your deals for an enhanced decision. So before we get into the determine if a deal makes financial sense or not, and that is return on investment. Now, your return on investment calculation is very simply the profit you're expecting to make from a deal divided by the capital you've invested. Right? So it's not the money you've gotten from the bank or from a private investor, but the money that you've yourself taken out of your and put into the deal. So if we use a quick example for a flip, this is where you buy low, sell for a profit. Let's assume that your profit deal is 50,000. The money you've put in is 350. So buying costs, some renovation costs, some holding costs, etc. Your return on investment, the 50,000 Rand profit divided by your money in the deal times 100, 14.2%. Now, that 14% is what you can use to compare how your money is working for you in the bank. The bank is giving you maybe 6 or 7% interest on your money, and this deal is giving you 14%, then your money is working for you. So it would make a lot of sense to put your money into this deal. This is a personal decision. Everybody's got their own level of returns that they're looking for. But my recommendation is if you're doing a flip, look for 15% plus. That just gives you a little bit of fat in the deal in case something does go wrong, in case you hold it for 3 or 6 months longer than you expect. If we look at a rental, similarly to a flip, you need to take your monthly cash flow, which is your monthly profit every month, times by 12 to get an annual, and that's your profit. Your capital invested solely to the capital flip is whatever money you're taking out of your pocket to invest in the deal. The 36 divided by the 300 times 100 gives you 12%. And again, compare that to the bank and see if this return is worth it for you. Now, one of the important things is when you are renting, you're looking obviously at your return property when you're making a decision in that vein. Now, that's why we built this thing called myapp.property. It's essentially a tool that was designed and created because of the need people had with analyzing deals and raising finance. So it's something that I've been working on 2 years. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears has gone into it, and I'm really excited to be showcasing it with you guys today. If you haven't, follow the link on the top. It's www.myapp.property.online. There's a register page. You just put in some details, your first name, last name, email address, etc. And then you can choose a free trial. If you've got a voucher, then you can use the voucher code. Otherwise, you can purchase one of the licenses. So if you haven't done that yet, please go to www.myapp.property.online. For all the required inputs in a property transaction. Then it will spit out what those are. And if the returns make sense, you can then, with a click of a button, generate an investor proposal. So this is just some screen grabs. I will take you through a live tutorial. This is just some screen grabs of the app. So there are essentially 7 stages that one needs to go through when looking at flipping a property. You've got your comparable analysis, your buying costs, other costs, finance costs, holding and selling, and then The summary tab will tell you what your deal is. In the first step, you're looking at what the current market value is, your profit, and some analysis of what the market's doing. Your buying costs is any costs associated with buying the property. Your renovation costs is any refurbs that you expect. Other costs are things that are not necessarily common, like an eviction or potentially a rezone finance. And then your holding costs and selling costs will tell you, what would be to hold the property for 6, 9, 12 months, however long, you estimate that. And then your selling costs. And then finally, it goes to the summary tab. And what the summary tab does is it takes all the information you've inputted into the app, and then it presents you with a on investment. And it essentially guides you and tells you, based on our metrics of what this one is something that you should maybe pursue. Also, from a rental point of view, and part of what our phase 2 rollout will be, is that it tells you return on investment would be over a 2, 4, 10, 15, 20-year period. It also tells you what your income, your expenses, and your cash flow would be over the 20-year period. To do now is I'd like to take you through a demo of using the My Property app, and I'm going to look at Dave if there's any specific questions in store for phase 2 and do a light demo for phase 2, which will in the next 2 weeks. So let's go into the demo. I'm going to change my screen to my Chrome account, and I'm just going to look for Dave. Dave, can you see the screen? Fantastic. So I'm going to log in here. This is the home page of the My Property app. And we're just going to go in to the dashboard page. Now, this dashboard page is for you to almost manage all your deals. So you can see that I've got a number of deals that I've got over the past few months. I've got my buy-to-let deals, which is here at the top. The multi-deals, which is in the middle, and then right at the bottom, I've got a section where I do my buy to flip. So that's kind of just holding good deals in account. And what's quite nice that you can, it's an stage currently. There's a few in pending. There's 1 or 2 in negotiation. So I know which ones are up of mine properties and which aren't. And you can also see some high-level details, what the offer price is, the net cash flow, ROI. So it's a great way for you to keep all of your deals in sort of one area, which you can manage on a regular basis. And also with each one of these, you can choose to view the deal. So viewing the deal will give you sort of a high-level summary shot. It'll tell you the high level of the deal if you just wanted to quickly have a look and remind yourself of a specific deal that you were working on. You can also choose to edit the specific deal, generate a proposal, duplicate that deal if it's no longer valuable. Okay, so I thought what could be quite nice is actually through a deal with you today. So what you can do is you can go to the top left-hand and you can go to look at a multi, and I'm going to add a new deal. Okay, and all I'm just going to expand it so that you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so just as I'd shown on the slides, there are the 7 stages that you need. And what we've tried to do to help you along your journey is we've added these Q-tips or these tool tips. So these question marks, hover over them. It gives you a little bit of an idea of what is expected for that field. So first of all, there's some general property details, so description, address, area, the number of living rooms, bathrooms, etc. This is something you can fill in. Otherwise, you can also choose to hide that section until further notice. The current market value. Now, what we're asking for is what is the asking price on property 24? What is the estate agent said is the asking price? So potentially the owner wants, let's call it R1 million for this deal. Offer price. Now, as professional investors, we make our money when we buy, so we never get what they want. So here you can estimate an offer price. Let's call it 700,000. I'm going to quickly pause there because I've got a question. Let me just have a quick look here. Okay, so the question is, can you add images to property? So you can add images to the property in the investor proposal section. So what we've done also in phase 2 is we've allocation on phase 2 where you can upload one picture, which will almost be like a profile for the property, which I'll show you just now. But when you're actually generating an investor proposal, there is a section for you to add, let's call it 10, 15 pictures of the properties that you can showcase it to an investor. So that's a great question. So the current market value is the asking. We're saying that we're going to we're going to ask for a 30% discount. Now, when you're looking at multi-lets, it's really important that you get your rental right. So this section here called monthly rental income is a way in which you can determine how much rent this property could make. Now, with a multi, you're obviously going to have a series of rooms. So let's say room 1 can rent for 2,500. You're looking at, student accommodation. Room 2 can rent for 3,300 because it's got, a little bit more space. We're looking at room number 3 could maybe go 3,400. Potentially 4 could go for maybe 5,600 because it's en suite. And just let the system load a little bit. We could even put here a room that could maybe go for, call it another 6,700, and that's the main. Then the monthly rental for this property would be roughly 20. So we can just click save to make sure that all the information is saved. Then next step would be to go to buying costs. So step number 2, you can click here and we'll do the Uber app where you can actually, input what the purchase price is and get the corresponding transfer attorney, bond attorney, and transfer deed. For this one, I'm just going to quickly put some fictitious numbers in there so get through the preview quite quickly. These would be the costs associated to buying the property. Again, there's tooltips here, so if it doesn't quite make sense for you, go have a read, try and understand it. Otherwise, you're also more than welcome to send also an email. Sourcing fee, if you look at sourcing this onto an investor or potentially charging a finder's fee for this deal, that's where you'd input it. Tenant moving costs, sometimes it's cheaper to move a tenant by tenant placing costs, maybe some outstanding debts. And if you purchase this at auction, there would be some auction related. So anything related to buying the property would be in this buy section. And everything that you would need to input has been put there. Right now, we've pretty much gone through all the detail here from the exterior and interior. So anything from a point of view being at the boundary wall, electric fencing, gate and motor, etc., 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 all the way to interior, front and back doors, bathroom tiling, painting, etc. So you might say that you want to renovate the kitchen. You might want to put some, new tiles and maybe a tub. You might want to do a little bit of tiling, and you might want to repaint. You do some flooring work as well, and even some electrical, right? So you, based on the consultations you've had with your builder, you can then determine what your refurb cost would be. Another thing that at the bottom is a contingency factor, and I would bottom just because building all runs over budget and over time, so it's important that you've put some fat in the deal. Right, you can go to other costs. As I mentioned, these are costs that aren't necessarily very common. Things like evictions, holding costs, etc. So you can put some figures in here if you feel that there is a need for it. Costs, this is where we're obviously trying to get access to the bank's money. So we might ask for an A loan at a 10% interest over 20 years. And it essentially tells us here that this would be the bond repayment. You can put a section here for angel financing. So potentially you've got an angel finance is going to give you a few $100,000 as well at 12%. You can then include it here and it will calculate that for you. Monthly cash flow. Looking at obviously a rental, so we understand what is the monthly fit or the monthly cash flow on this deal. So the rental income is $21,500. The financing cost, which is the bank's financing, will be $5,400. Potentially the levies, the rates and taxes might be, I don't know, $650. The building insurance maybe $300. Void. Now this is a very, very important section. Void stands as a sort of code word C. Now, when you're looking at rentals, it's impossible to expect that your property fully tenanted all year round. That is just an unrealistic expectation to have. Even actually with student accommodation usually has an upwards of 20% vacancy period in the year, because they don't rent November and December because they're on holiday, so they're not going to be paying for the rent. And also, if a student tenant, enrolls for a course but they fail halfway through the year and they don't continue with their course, you get tenant, June, July onwards. So your room is vacant for those last 6 months of the year because it's going to be hard to find it. So that's why this is such an important section when you're looking at multi-let specifically. Sort of the rule of thumb, and you're looking at usually between a 4 and an 8% void period, a normal two-bedroom house or three-bedroom house, an average buy-to-let. When you're looking at multi-let, you're looking at between 10 and 16%, depending on and when you're looking at student accommodation, I usually go at 18 to about 24%. So some high-level numbers that I'd recommend you use. Obviously, you want to back that up with TPN. TPN does tell you what the vacancy rates are, what the risks are in specific areas. So let's say multi-let, it's a relatively high risk area. So we're going to go 13% vacancy charge, which means we're taking off 2,795 Rand per month for our income. It's essentially a provision. It's you're assuming that you're not going to get paid 13 times. So you're taking that income away and you're putting into a bank account that when the tenant leaves or when the property is vacant, or you've got that provision that can, maintain your bond repayments or whatever it may be. Our app does include that. So if you put 9%, it on top of that, it adds 1.15 for that. And then maintenance provision, it's a provision that aside for any maintenance charges that you might occur. Again, student accommodation, as much as it's very profitable, it's very expensive at times because students, they tend to break down the property. Every 3 years you need to you renovate the property because they see it as their own home. They see it as a temporary accommodation. So if it was a student accommodation, actually, let's say this was student accommodation, you put a 20% budget for and maybe a 15, even 20% budget for your maintenance. What you can see here is based on those figures, the estimated flow for this deal would be about 5,400, just under it. So that would be the monthly profit coming in on this. If we then go to the summary tab, the summary tab is going to tell us that this is a fantastic deal. It's a deal 31 million. We're going to offer 700. This will be our total 67,000 Rand. That would be our cost. That's buying, renovations, etc. The total purchase price, the offer price plus the costs of the deal is 767. Then gross rental will tell us what the gross yield is. If you're not sure what the gross yield is the calculation in the tooltip. Essentially, it is your rental, your gross rental times 12, divide your total purchase price. Anything over 15% is an indication that it would count positively. So 33% is a very high figure, something that excites us a lot. Your net annual income is essentially your cash flow over 12 years. Your net yield is or net annual rental income divided by your total purchase price. Capital invested, more money in the deal. Right now, remember, your money in the deal is going to be the 67,000. So you also need to put deposit down because you're only going to get, I think, your capital invested would be. And that's how we determine what the return on investment is. So the return on investment, our calculation here is this figure. Your net annual rental income, i.e. your cash flow on a monthly basis annualized, divided by the money you've put into the deal. And that's why it works out to a 31.28% return. And one of the things that we wanted to app as well is a few scenarios. Sometimes it's great that a deal makes finance, but what if the interest rate goes up? What if the refurbs are a lot more expensive than we expected? What if the we're expecting to get is also less? So that's what the scenario tab is about. The scenario is telling you if the rental income had to change in any way, how would it affect your deal? If your bond interest rate had to change, if your purchase price had to change, or if your refurbishments had to change. So for instance, if we look at rental income, now on the original numbers, the projected ROI is 31%, or 38%, 20% less is then 7.6. If we had to go here minus 30%, it would tell us that we would then be going at a 10% buy. So I think that's still quite a lot of buffer. We're expecting that if we only reduce our rent by 30%, then we're only, make cent ROI. So for me, that's quite a safe factor. The revised purchase price. So if the purchase price was 10%, the ROI would obviously be higher. If it was 10% more, the ROI would be lower. So if we factor in that, the purchase price is actually going to be 30% more than we expect, our return will still be 18%. So this is a way in which you can stress test your deal. Assuming that things are wrong, and they will go wrong, or assuming things will change. Here again, with bond interest rates, if your rate goes to 13%, there's quite a significant reduction in your ROI. This deal is good enough that it can withstand that pressure. This to save, it'll then save it into your dashboard, and from your deal dashboard, you can then generate an investor. Now, your investor proposals is really an opportunity for you to fill in forms, and then it spits out a professionally designed investor proposal, which you can take or potentially to an investor to raise the capital. So all of these property details are pulled from this section. You can then go to property proposal headings. Now, these are the headings that we usually see in most investors. So things like deal introduction, how to source, the condition of the property, the exit strategy, your personal, introduction as an investor. It's that we can see who you are, and then financing requirements. So if we just put some dummy text in here, that, and then hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Exit strategy, your profile, which will be instant once you've updated, and this requires 80% loan bank. And then you can put some contact details here, your cell phone number, other number, website, whatever it may be. So that would be some of the inputs that you'd need. There's also a section T, so you might want to add an amenity. Airport is 2 kilometers away. Maybe add one more where potentially the freeway is 1 kilometer away. Okay. Then there's a picture section. So to answer the question that the gentleman had, you can add pictures both from an exterior and interior point of view. So I'm hoping that I've got some pictures here that I can upload. So go to my deals. Discarded Berea. So this would be an outside that I could maybe put in there. So let's just let that up. You can see on the bottom left, there is an upload function happening. So there's one of the pictures. I want to show you phase 2 just now, where we've made this a much easier process where you can up. Another question from Dave. So the question is, if you're looking to buy property from scratch, so essentially doing a development. To be honest with that question, I've never development before, so I wouldn't know exactly what the intricacies are. What we all do though in phase rollouts to come is add a commercial section, add a development section. Currently, it doesn't cater for it. I don't think it caters mainly for your stock standard buy-to-let, multi-let. And yeah, other question. It exports as a PDF. So this will export as a PDF. You can also add other checklist documents. So you can add an officer, so you can add a builder's quote, and then it will generate that for you. So you can generate a simplified proposal, which I'm going to do, as a detailed proposal. And we can look at a quick difference between the two. It might take a couple of seconds to generate in that, as well as the long proposals also being downloaded. So let's have a short proposal, what the outcome is of the short proposal. Just taking a few seconds to load. Okay, so this is the proposal that is the short proposal. It's 3 pages. It essentially takes your logo, pastes on the top of the page. There's a section for, let me just zoom in, the introduction of the deal, high-level property value. So just the 5-6 key things that an investor wants to see. The introduction of who you are plus your profile picture, so that, put a face to a name. And then high-level numbers, the buying cost, refurbs, the finance cost, and then the monthly cash flow. And this is really what the investor wants to see, is what is the income, all expenses, gives you the cash flow and your return on investment, plus your contact details. So as you can see, once you get used to using this on a regular basis, you can generate an investor proposal in a few minutes. Let's look at proposals. So this is now 7 pages long. Again, there's all the details, the introduction of the deal, how it was sourced, condition, the high-level property values, the exit strategy. Again, the personal introduction, maybe some more details around the property, so the features, the amenities, etc. And then here are some of the pictures, right? So there's only one of each. I should have put a few more, but you can essentially put six pictures for each section, 6 in the interior. And then here it comes down to a more detailed version of the numbers. So here you can see all of the income minus all of the expenses. So it really breaks it down an enormous amount of detail. So if you're working with an amiable kind of person, you might want to send them the short version. If you're working with an analytical kind of person, you might want to send them the proposal. So you can see who your investor is and what their needs would be. And then essentially, again, just some more detail. It also gives the scenarios. So all the scenarios, again, if you're working with a very skeptical person, you can then show them that you've actually looked at how the scenarios could play out and affect the deal. I've got Okay, so the question is, other than the short and long proposals, or what other flexibility do you have? So currently we don't have anything else other than the short and long proposal. I would be interested to hear from the person who asked that question, what kind of other proposals would be useful? We are going templates regarding refurbs in place. So when you're walking through a property, we'd like to have a template in place to kind of pick the sections that you want to renovate, and it will generate a rough quote for. But otherwise, other proposals, I'd be interested to hear what other ads the app could do to enhance your journey. As mentioned, this app, I started it about 2 years ago. It was a mini brainchild of mine, and it is that only works when it is improved and when it's used by people. So please feel free to always email me or email our team and on. I'm very conscious of time. Is I just wanted to show you a bit of phase 2. So that was phase 1 that is currently working. You can go and try it out and go and use it to your heart's content. This is phase 2, and this is what's going to be coming live. Let's call it 2 weeks. So I'm just logging in. What you'll see is we just changed the opening page a little bit more. There's going to be a section for tutorials and videos. So when you click on here, there's going to be tutorials, property educational, self-help, motivation, and about us. So you can go and check that out once this is up and running. There's also going to be a gauge and analyze a deal and generate investment proposal. So we've just cleaned it up slightly, just make the user experience a little easier. If we go to analyze a deal, you've got the flip, the buy-to-let, the multi-let. So let's go and have a look at a buy-to-let. So again, add a new deal. I'm going to quickly run you through it. What we've added here is a Google Maps. It's obviously in development phase right now, so it's not where it's in, but there will be a Google Maps there, so property photo. So you can start to create a little bit of a profile for your deal. Same process, right? Analysis all the way through to summary. So I'm just going to use some quick numbers here again. So the same deal that we were looking at, 1,000 rental. Let's say that the agent says there would be 8,500 for this buy to let. Step 2, you can click here to your uber.coza home loan transfer calculator. We are in the process of automating this. We just need to work with the legal team, and they'll be able to tell us exactly if a purchase price is, call it 700,000, the loan amount is 30, so you're getting a 90% loan to value. It's a freehold, it's not registered for VAT. Tells you your total transfer costs are. So your bond registration costs are 22,900. Your transfer costs are 1,083. So you can pop that in. As time goes on, we are looking at automating this. For now, it is manual, structured, and a little bit more of an elegant so that you can keep track of it. Refurbs, the feedback we got there is that people do like their lists, but they also want a short option. So there's a short list. I'm going to just add one refurb item and the total cost. So total work, you can put your 200,000 or 20,000. Instead of going through the entire list, if you're not that detailed or that edited, you can choose the short list, just put in one item, and you got your costs. Other costs exactly the same, still your costs that aren't very unique costs. So you might want to get, a 90% loan from the bank. And then here you've got your investors, right? So I might say that I'm going to loan money. He just doesn't know it yet. I'm going to loan 50,000 and he's going to be graciously giving me a 12% interest over a 5-year period, but he's going to only charge me the interest. So here you've got an option of, do you want to get into a relationship where you're paying monthly interest in capital like you would the bank? Are you looking at paying the interest, or are you looking at paying the interest at the end of the term and the end, which means every month you won't pay anything? And the levies will be 0 because it's all 350 for rates, 100, let's say 6% because it's a buy to let, 8% there, 5% low risk. Unfortunately, the cash flow here is going to be negative. Okay, so the summary tab tells us again it's going to be a negative deal, so we wouldn't recommend it. But also done now with phase 2 is we've done a section called IRR, which is internal rate of return. And this is going to tell us is how does the deal perform over a 5, 10, 15-year period. So what you need to do is use these variables. One is that the things that the expense year are going to increase. So everything gets more expensive every year. I'd recommend using a factor of 6.5%. So every year expenses are going to increase by 6.5. Really rental increase, right? If you're in the right area, there should be an increase in rental every year. in this area, it's quite an up and coming area. It might be a 10% growth in 10 years' time, because 1,000 Rand today is not the same as 100,000 Rand in 10 years' time. So including the discount rate of 10% will tell you what your money will be worth in 10 years' time in capital appreciation. When you click the calculate button, what it will do is it will give you a ROI projection over 20. So what you can see is in year one, yes, it's negative. Year two, it's zero, so you break even. And then it starts to grow. You can see by, 8 years, 10 years, it's 58%, 60%. And what we've done is we've also just broken it down here. You can see in year one, your income is 100, your expenses is 110, so your cash flow is negative. But then as year two, that's when you break even. And slowly but surely, you can see that it starts to increase. Now, of course, we teach that you need to buy a property that's cash positive from day one, but you might want to sacrifice that positive cash flow in a high appreciating area, or if potentially you expect the rentals to grow on year, because as you can see, it's earning a positive cash flow. And if we go back here, you can see before it's a 18% return. Now, I must just note that return is a return on the money you invested today. It's not a return on the equity that's generated through the property. So we are going to bring those kind of things in. We want to bring a return on equity calculator in. Sort of progress. I mean, like I said, this is a small little vision of the app that I have. I'd like essentially the app to link with TPN and with Lightstone, that once you put an address in, it automates out all the information for you. We want to make it easy. We also want to make it into a mobile app. But these things do take time, and they do take patience. So we are on your side. I am an investor myself, looking at making this app super useful and friendly for investors, so that you can reach your financial freedom dreams through property. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is pretty much the proposal. I don't think I'm going to have time for it to show you one that I've recently created. So this was an investor proposal it's a very similar look and feel again, but what I just want to show you is here's a slot for all the pictures. See that the pictures do come out quite nicely. But at the bottom of this proposal, you will see the IRR parameters. So we have now included this into a proposal, essentially your projections over a 15, 20-year period. Because what we've noticed is that, yes, investors do want to invest with people, but they want to know how is the deal going to perform as time goes on. So that's essentially a little bit of a tutorial as to what the app will be doing in the next 2 weeks. And I hope that that's given you a little bit of confidence and courage to get going. So now I'll spend a little bit of time here on the questions section. So just hide the chat bar here. First question that I have here is from Butseko, that says to reside in the property. So Butseko, I think if I understand your question correctly, is are banks willing to loan money to investors, not to first-time property buyers? And the answer is definitely. So you might want to go and research ABSA's net-to-let product. They're probably, in my opinion, the most savvy bank when it comes to investors. They'll look at funding investors specifically for deals. And what's great is once you've got your third property transaction, or on your third property transaction, they will take the future rent of your deal and apply it to your affordability. So gone are the days where they would look at your salary and say, your salary can afford this much bond, so as you reach that bond, you can no longer lend. The banks are now looking at the rental income from properties and saying, we can actually add that to your affordability and to your salary so that you loan more. So yes, definitely check out. I would recommend ABSA and see what they other questions. Okay, so Grasian's question is how to hide certain elements of the investor proposal. Now, what we are doing in phase 2 is there's a selection of headings that you can put in. Maybe if I just go here quickly to the proposals heading tab, there's a section called add heading, right? So future, you can choose to add headings that you feel are appropriate, but also choose to hide certain headings, because you obviously don't want to share the address in your investor proposal, because you don't want somebody to see this and then try and do the deal behind your back. So these are the headings that we currently have. Obviously, we're open to, and what we want to do is essentially get to a point where you can choose the headings you want to select, and then put those headings into the document, avoiding or ignoring the others and keeping that information. So that would be that question. Question now is around tax. So now tax is something that we have obviously been asked a lot, and we've been hesitant to have tax numbers in there because we are tax advisors. But what we have done is we've started negotiation and conversations with an attorney and an account. And what we are going to do is we're going to have a very, very high level tax calculation in the app to make sure that when you do get your return, it is tax. But we're going to have to put disclaimers in place. We are not tax advisors. We cannot give advice, but we do want to include a portion that says, are you buying as an individual or as a company? Maybe around your current income. And then we can say, okay, you're probably in the 41% bracket. So if this income comes in your personal name, this short profit, and this will be your actual return. So we are considering it. It's just working around the legalities of being a tax advisor that a little bit nerve-wracking. I see here Julianne asked what, yeah, of course. So Julianne, obviously, as that you need at least 3 years of track record before a bank will even look at lending to you. What I can say is that, in my opinion, the best bank when it comes to working with investors, I know EE and Standard Bank are also close on their tail. I would say Netbank are probably the furthest behind, if honest. And the feedback I've heard from other investors is APSA. I actually heard a statistic the other day from Better Bond that 38 of all loans to investors that were approved was through APSA. So APSA was the highest bank approving loans for investors. The lowest bank is Netbank. So I would say start with APSA, move down to the other ones. Next question, how do you select the property demonstrated at the start? So I think your question is more around how to find deals, and I think that's a whole webinar on its own. So Nick, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just messaging me in private, or for this specific demonstration, it's not included in the scope. Next, I've got KGF. When sourcing a deal, how do you calculate fee to that specific deal? So under buying costs, if I again go back to one of the deals, let's just go here back to the buy to let and we edit it. Your fee would be a cost that fits under buying costs. So here under step 2, here's a section called sourcing fee. So this is where if you want to apply a finder's fee to your deal, this is where you'd input that value. Okay, Josephine, which parameters should I check when negotiating the asking price? I'm not quite sure I understand your question there. What parameters you should check? Maybe you could just expand the question, Josephine, while I answer the next one. Okay, next question is, would you recommend taking 100% bond? I think 100% still quite common when you're a first time buyer. I have heard of a few instances. I think it stands to get 100% because of your money in the deal, but it also means that your bond repayments every month will be higher, which could end up with a negative cash flow. So I think it really depends what your returns would be. If we maybe go to this buy to let deal, right, and if I increase the rental to 500 because I want it to be positive. The finance cost, and let's make the finance cost 80%. Currently, the deal is making 6.9% if we assume we're loaning 80% from the bank. If we go finance cost and we put in here 100% loan to value, our return would now be 40%. So by increasing the amount of the bank's funding in the deal and our cost into the deal, the cash flow, although it's reduced, your return is much higher. So that's where hedging other people's money can be very powerful. So yes, I would recommend doing a % loan as long as the deal can withstand it. As long as the rent is high enough, they recommend it, yes. I think, let me try and go to Precious's question. Tips on negotiating, especially for us, the newbies. So of course, property investing works when you can buy a property price. And obviously there's an element of negotiating that price. Again, I think that's out of the scope of this specific a seminar, because I could speak for hours and hours on that. I think my level answer to that would be make sure that you're finding either a distressed property or a distressed seller. A distressed property is one that's in physically bad condition because the estate agent struggle to sell, and if they're struggling to sell, you'll have of negotiation power. Or a distressed seller, someone who's going through a divorce, a relocation, or some sort of difficulties, they'd also be open to a potentially a lower offer. But Seko, when sourcing, is there an acceptable fee? Always very hard to answer because you can charge a sourcing fee as long as the deal is great. If the deal is fantastic, you can charge a bigger. So my recommendation is always to take a percentage of the profit. So if the profit is 100,000 rand, I might then take 10% of that and allocate that as a fee to myself. That's not a rule. That's just the way I like to do it. Again, if the deal is very profitable, then you can charge a bigger fee. What I want to add to that is that you guys have to be very careful when sourcing deals, because if it's done incorrectly, it can be seen as illegal by the State Affairs Board. You need to make sure that this is seen as a finder's fee, and you need to get the right legal consultation, because if you're seen earning a commission off a property transaction, just be careful when you are looking at a sourcing deal. How well established is the myapp.property brand in terms of banks and investors trusting the credit reports and projections? So that is a very good question. Currently, I would say that there is no brand within the banks. With investors, I would like to think that there is a bit of trust within the investors. We have presented at numerous networking events, and it has been very well received. And about 1,000 active users on the app at the moment. I do think that it's going to grow with confidence. We are in conversations with APSA. APSA do read the application. They wanted to obviously become better and more advanced, but they have shown a strong interest. So I think in terms of brand, we're working quite closely with APSA, with Remax, with just. Okay, the next question is, Grant mentioned making 100% profit for a deal at the training. How does that work? Well, yeah, I mean, your return on investment, he's basically saying that you can make 100% return on investment. If you're putting in 100,000 Rand of your own money, the deal should bring back the 100,000 plus 100,000 Rand profit, and then you've essentially made 100% return on investment. So when Grant says 100% profit on a deal, it means 100% the money you put in gets brought back to you. Basically, you double your money. Josephine, I don't know if you've had a elaborate on your question here regarding the which parameters should I check when negotiating price, but if you can quickly give us a little bit more detail there, then I can answer. And then, is there any other questions? Fantastic, Joan. That is an incredibly good question. I thought I did have slides, but I unfortunately hid them. Okay, so let me just quickly open this up. This is the rent payment index. This is on TPN, and will give you an indication of what the rate might be. So what you can see here is yellow, orange, red, green, and basically telling you are red, no goes, orange, okays, and then green is go. Now, what the current good standing index or the current good standing ratio in South Africa is currently 80%, which means that 85% of the people in South Africa are paying their rent on time. That's what the current statistics say. So what you can see, the yellow area there at the bottom is telling you that that area is in conjunction with an average. So that's going at about a 85% hit rate. If national standing is that 15% of the time people don't pay, the red is 25% plus people don't pay. Alternatively, the green is indicating above or 5% above the national average. So that's the way in which you can deduce from the report what your potential default rate might. So we've got time for another 2 questions. I'm conscious that I want to get you guys out as soon as possible. Let's see if there are any other questions that have come up. Julianne, okay, invest in holiday rentals, B&B and Airbnb. Will you be able to adapt the app to accommodate this? So Julianne, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what more would be needed. I'm very happy to sit with you or on a call or have a chat with you to understand how this app could be enhanced that specific need, because you could get your rentals, you could determine what your cash flow could be. But I would be very interested to sit down with you, maybe Skype, and get an understanding from you as to what would be needed in the app to cater for Airbnb. I think it is sufficient for you to do a high-level analysis, but we are very willing to adapt the app and make sure that everybody's needs. Is there any more training that they can get using the platform? Yes. So there, what I can do is I can add you to mailing list. I know that there was a recent event this weekend where Legacy hosted a 2-day workshop, and all the people that attended that shop are also on this call. And they've been put into a mailing system where if they'll get a sort of a tutorial or get a value added mailer. We do have it's about a 5 to video, you know, how to analyze a buy to let, how to analyze a buy to flip, how to register, or how to do a profile picture. So we've created all these little short tutorial videos, plus there's a fast question section on our app. What we'll show you quickly is on phase 2, which is coming out again in 2 weeks time. There's a tutorial section. Going forward, any video that I create or any video that is created around training people, giving advice, was tutorial section. So going forward, right now, it's kind of, it's all on my computer, and I've got the I can share with you. But going forward, we want to have this one sort of repository, which will host all the videos. I think maybe just to end, I know that there are a lot of questions, and I'm sorry to not answer all of them. TPN, it's www.tpn.co.za. If you go and find out more about them. Then you've got Lightstone, www.lightstoneproperty.co.za, and then www.myapp.property.online. If you get in contact with me, you can email support. That's SUPPORT at myapp.property.online. Questions, if you want to know about the tutorial videos, if you want to be up to date with regarding the phase 2 launch, if you want to give us some feedback, please email support at myapp.property.online. Otherwise, go and check those other resources. They are obviously all paid. TPN, I think, per report. Lightstone is a membership fee, and My Property App is a membership fee. But if it makes, because they are going to add a lot of value to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you very much for giving me this hour of your ears, and I hope that it was valuable. If you have any further questions, comments, or feedback, please email me at support@myapp.online. And until next time, happy investing.